was a very scary experience to do a first roast in here. And I totally messed up that roast. Man, those beans, the smoke was pouring. I mean, it was bad. I'm like, whoa! I'm like freaking out because I thought there was going to be a fire. Because I thought I had it down. Oh, how embarrassing that was.
Today we're here at Precision Valley Roasters in Springfield, Vermont with Aaron Polster. Did I say that right?
Polster, yeah.
Polster. And he's going to show us how he roasts coffee and the finer points on a good cup of coffee.
I started roasting about, 2008, 2007, 2008 on an island in Maryland called Smith Island. I was looking for a good cup of coffee. There wasn't any, so I started roasting coffee on a little hot top roaster, which I could put about 4 ounces of coffee at a time in it. So I started a company down there called the New York Experience, and it was a coffee cart, and I had a lot of business from tourists and regulars, and it was a lot of fun. So then we moved up here. I decided I'd keep going with the coffee, but I'd have to graduate to a larger machine. I can roast about 5 pounds per batch, and a batch is about between 13 and 14, 15 minutes per batch. So, you know, I can do about 30 pounds an hour or so, give or take. What we have to do first before we do any roasting is to warm it up for about 15 minutes. This is what you call a drum roaster. So there's a drum in here that turns. Can't really see it, sorry. Inside this thing, it turns, and there's a burner underneath that is powered by gas that warms it up. This is where the beans go, the hopper. This is how you release them into the drum. This here is called a sight glass, and you'll see the beans turning in there when they're roasting. This is how you look at the beans when they're roasting. You can take a sample of them and look at how the color is changing. I'll show you that when we do a roast. You really got to use all your senses with this machine. That's what I like about it. You're using your visual, you're using your smell, and you're using time, and you're using your ears to hear what time the beans begin to crack. All the beans I get come from relatively small farms and cooperatives in all the coffee growing regions of the world. And I try to get organic beans as much as possible, but they're not always available when I want them. And the thing about organic is a lot of these farms are so small that they can't afford to get organic certification, but yet they're already using organic principles. The beans, when I get them, they come in either 152-pound sacks or 132-pound sacks. It's either 60 or 69 kilograms. Yeah, and this one, I don't think I've opened. This I haven't taken anything out of, but if you, go ahead, try to lift that. It's like it's more than
yeah, it's like a ton of bricks.
More like a more heavier than a dead body.
Yeah.
We're going to do some Sumatran today.
Oh, great. This is my favorite.
I know, it's my favorite. I got to make some iced coffees. This is a Sumatran, and you'll notice it's very green. I mean, it's like almost jade-like. See how dark that one is?
Yeah.
So this is an Indonesian, that's Sumatra, and this is Kenyan, African.
Oh, wow.
You see there's a percentage of water loss when you roast, because I put in, for instance, with the Burundi that I roasted back here, I put in 5.31 pounds of beans. After I roasted it, I got 4.59. So there was a 14% water loss. You really don't want to go higher than 20%. It'll mean that your bean is probably not so great if you're going to have that much water loss. So either that or you're roasting it too hot. So it's always good to be in this range here of water loss. Yeah, one day when I first started roasting, I kind of messed up with the, I was roasting, I said, oh, I'll just roast a lot of coffee, and I didn't do very good with the labeling. And so I had a mystery bean that I had to just, you know, drink myself. And I'm just going to put this in here now. I'm not going to dump it yet. I'm going to raise up the heat a little bit more because you really want to get it up to about 400 before you dump the beans in there. So let me get my little Kenya. Okay, so we're up to 400 degrees in the drum. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to release the beans into the drum. And I'm going to set my timer because the ideal, you want to have like first crack start. First crack is when the oils and the chemicals in the beans start to expand and the water starts to evaporate. So it's called first crack when all that starts happening. That happens at about 363, 364 degrees bean temperature. So as you see, the temperature is rapidly dropping when you put those beans in. And if you look at your chart, that's what happens. It drops, and then at certain stages of the roast, you're going to be checking your beans and smelling them. And these are the grass, hay, and bread are the three different smells that are associated with this time and this temperature. So you'll know if your roast is developing properly. Generally, you want it to have hit first crack around 8 or 9 minutes. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's how to have an ideal thing moving, that's when you want it to happen. Sometimes it happens later, sometimes it happens earlier. So this is your sampler here. As you can see, the beans, probably not great light here for that, but you look at your beans now, nothing really much is happening yet. What I sometimes do, I know this is really nerdy, but I sometimes put my little headlamp on because the light in here is not so great. And you can see the beans a little bit better. They're starting to turn.
A little brown, a little bit.
Okay, well, again, they're starting to turn a little bit. Probably when this gets up to 400 in the drum, we'll be hitting first crack, and that's just right about right if you're looking at your...
So do you hear the first crack?
Yeah, you'll hear it.
Oh, good.
You'll hear it. You'll hear it. It's like popcorn popping.
Oh, wow.
And you're not really...
Yeah.
You can definitely smell the change.
Yeah.
What does it remind you of?
It reminds me of the smell of brewing beers. Some of the malt when you're heating it up. So is there any coffee grown in the United States?
You can grow coffee in Hawaii.
Oh.
You can grow coffee. You're not going to get any. You can grow a coffee plant.
Oh yeah.
You know, but you're not going to get any yield from it. No, you really have to have that elevation and microclimate of you know, cooler evenings, warmer days, temperature in a certain range. That's the key. Very little fluctuation in the temperature in terms of the daytime. Okay, we're up to 400 now in the drum, and you can see now how fast the red is the bean temperature, so that's going up there. But look, we're already at 9 minutes, and I haven't had first crack yet. So now you're starting to smell the cooking.
Oh yeah.
Right, starting to crack now. So generally with this Sumatran, I like to take the temperature up in the drum to about 425. And even if I lower I'm going to let it go up to 425, but it'll still keep rising because the beans are now giving off a lot of heat. So I'm going to just lower it a little bit. That's the other thing. You play around with the temperature and the control of the temperature. not set in stone. Now, as I said, we're going to be roasting this a little bit dark. I don't like to overdo it and burn the hell out of it. After that first crack, you really want to keep checking because it can tip so fast into the Badlands. All right, that's about as dark as I want to go with that.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I've lowered the heat to a certain extent, not all the way. Then I'm going to dump these beans out, and I'm going to bring this forward a little bit to let some of that air flow underneath the beans a little bit. I let them spin around in here as long as possible because, I mean, if you try to touch that, you'll burn your finger out. Go ahead, stick your finger in there.
Yeah, that's all right.
I mean, even when I dump it in the colander, it's still pretty hot. It's a whole range of tastes depending on how you roast it. So if I roasted that at a lighter roast, I'd be bringing out other flavors that may or may not be palatable. So you kind of have to find the right roast for each bean. So generally doing a sample roast and trying to find the right roast level is vitally important. A lot of companies send you a list of like suggested roast range because they've cupped it already, you know. So it makes my life a little easier. But generally, what I like to do is I look at all the varietals, like where they come from, how they're processed, are they wet processed or dry processed, and then I try to say, okay, well that's a wet processed coffee from Burundi, let's say. Let me look up all my lists of wet processed coffees from Burundi and how, you know, how were they roasted, and are they from the same area, you know, and I'll try to play around with things by just looking at where they're from and what their history is. I have a whole book full of printouts that I use when I'm roasting if I don't have a roast recommendation. So it's really good to have stuff like this for your own, you know.
So you've had to assemble that yourself, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, no one taught me how to do this.
Taught you,
no, I didn't.
You just started doing it with your 8-ounce roaster?
Yeah, I started doing it with my, and here, and this is the, if you can make it over here, this is the small Gene Cafe $500 machine. It's called an off-axis roaster. So this is about how many beans you can put in here, up to this line per roast. And I'm not going to turn this on while this thing's going. I don't want to. But anyway, you can adjust the temperature here, the time, and basically let her go. And this is the chaff collector here.
Oh wow! Yeah.
But it's a great little machine. I used it, and it works fine. It's terrific if you want to do a lot of home roasting. If you want to roast stuff yourself, it's a perfect little machine for that. I do about 40 or 50 pounds when I roast, generally. Sometimes more. Like yesterday, not yesterday, Monday, I did like 75 pounds. And this place, it was like, I felt like I was like getting high off the fumes because the smoke was, I mean, I generally have a fan going when I do a lot of roasting because it's really not healthy to be breathing in all that smoke.
Right, all that, yeah.
There's a lot of carcinogens in that smoke. So I was just reading articles about a lot of coffee roasters are coming down with respiratory issues. Well, yeah, but I mean, that's why I like to cool these beans and get that smoke out of here as fast as possible. When I got this 2 years ago, was a very scary experience to do a first roast in here because I really, even though I had the instructions, it was incredibly scary to watch this thing heat up, and I'm putting the beans, the gas, having to adjust the gas, and I totally messed up that roast. Man, those beans, the smoke was pouring. I mean, it was bad. I'm like, whoa! I'm like freaking out because I thought there was going to be a fire. The beans were toasted, man. Oh my God, it was a. And plus, I had all these people here because I had invited. I said, okay, I'm going to crank up the roast today. Why don't you all come over and watch? And it was like, because I thought I had it down.
Of course.
Oh, how embarrassing that was. So I said, you know what? That'll never happen again. All right, so what I'm going to do here,
That's a slick little machine.
A slick little machine, This is my ingenious cooling method. Cool it down a little bit more. Different coffees you process differently. A lot of Ethiopians are dry processed, so what that means is that they're basically laid out to dry in the sun, whereas a wet process is they're soaked in this big vat of water and they're fermented so they can pull the skins off and then they're dried. It's just different coffees lend themselves to different methods of processing. So,
And probably the region too. It would be harder to wash if you don't have any water.
That is a big issue.
Do you find it changes the flavor at all if it's wet process, dry process?
Yeah, there is a difference. That's why I think the Ethiopians, I don't know if I've ever had a wet processed Ethiopian. It's definitely a different taste.
What is a Sumatra?
Sumatra is a wet process. That's Sumatra. I mean, I think they can go either way with that. I think what we have now is a wet process. And Sumatra, I mean, there's a lot of rainfall over there. So.
There is a lot of rainfall there?
Yeah, it's Indonesia.
Oh, okay. So you're pretty good at your geography. Were you good before you got into coffee?
I always love maps.
Yeah.
I love maps.
If you could visit any of these coffee growing areas, where would be
Ethiopia.
Yeah,
I'd love to go there. Or Yemen, but I'll never get there. No one will ever get there. Yemen is like, where's Ethiopians?
Oh yeah, right there.
Yeah, it's too bad. It's a bad things going on there.
A lot of activity.
Yeah, it's hard to get coffee out of Yemen now. This is like the best coffee right here, in my opinion, anyway.
So what's the future of your business in the
future
Precision Valley?
I'm cautiously optimistic about, expanding a little bit.
Great.
That's all I'm going to say about it right now. But, there are some plans in the works for developing an actual space where it could be open to the public and, cafe, blah, blah, blah. So, we'll see. I don't want to jinx myself by talking about it until I actually have it happening. So. But I think it would be a really good thing for me and the public too, to educate them about coffee, which most people don't have a good sense of here. I mean, I think in the big cities we take it for granted, but I think out in these rural areas there's not a lot of exposure to specialty coffee. I think the farmers markets, to put a plug in for the farmers markets, because I think they're a great educational tool that it's been underrated. I think that it's a great way to educate people about many things. Coffee for one, getting in touch with your produce, where it's coming from, so I think that it's an opportunity. There's always an opportunity, and the farmers market makes it happen.
So why fresh roasted coffee? I mean, can you just keep your beans in the cupboard for years and they'll still be good? I know I used to do that in college.
Yeah, well, you know, in college you had other things on your mind. You probably weren't concerned with the taste of your coffee, right?
Right.
Bad idea. No, that's another funny thing that I'm a stickler about. I don't really let any coffee go if it's over a week old out there. Like, yeah. Now that I'm shutting this off, I'll show you what the chaff. Let me unplug this. This is the, see how much chaff is in here just from...
So that's the flammable stuff then, huh?
Yeah, that's the chaff in there. So, yeah, that's a, you know, it's a couple of handfuls in there, but you really don't want it to build up too much. So again, I don't know what everybody else does, but I thoroughly clean this out after, you know, every after I'm done roasting.
Today we just roasted some coffee with Aaron Polsner of Decision Valley Coffee Roasters, and we're about to have a delicious cup of coffee. I'd like to thank the sponsors of the Farmers Market, Sojourns Community Health Clinic, and Hunter Studios, and our underwriter, the Village Square Booksellers. Come visit us at the Bellows Falls Farmers Market Fridays 4 to 7 p.m. Every other Friday, Aaron will be there selling his beans, and we'll have iced coffee on the hot days. So thanks for joining us, and have a great week.